and welcome back to Mastercrafted. And today, me and Phil are going to be talking all about the mistakes we made this past weekend, the things that we regretted decision making wise, and how we're going to hopefully not do that in the future. And hopefully, you can learn from our mistakes as well. Phil, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm great. Lane, you and I, we had a great weekend. We went up to Billings, Montana to play in a about 50 player GT. It was super fun. The community up there is great. We have a few great friends up there and we made a few more. So if you are tuning in for the channel for the first time and you played Lane and or you talked to Lane or you talked to one of the Mastercrafted coaches that was up there, or just some of the individuals that came up from Denver, because quite a few of us came up. I hope you had a great time. I hope you met some new people, and I hope you had some great games of 40K, because we definitely did.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We may have got back a little late. We're recording this Monday, day after. I had the easy. I got home at 3:30. I still what time did you all make it all the way back down to the Springs?
I got back at
Yeah, it's been a long, busy Monday, but we're not gonna quit. We're here for y'all. Our mistakes cannot wait to be shared, so we're gonna dive right into them. And the first of which, we're gonna talk about our game one. We had just some really bad matchups. Both of us, we got super unlucky in the first round, and we got paired into just some real terrible people. And they're each other. We got paired into each other. Yeah, we miraculously drove 8 hours to play each other immediately. So that was fun. That was great. We had a great game, but we're going to talk about the mistakes we made in that game, and yeah, how it kind of affected the scores and what we could have maybe done differently.
Yeah, so as Lane said, we did get paired into each other, but I'm more than happy to play Lane because they're always great games. So I brought Final Day Gene Stealer Cult. That was what I was running. I was running the new brick of Raveners. I had plenty of gargoyles. I had lictors, death leapers. I had two big bricks of acolytes with mining weapons, which have anti-vehicle 4-up, which I really, really wanted to get into Lane's Dorns. And then I was running a bunch of chaff, a bunch of 5-mans with flamers and reductive saboteurs. I had every trading piece a Gene Stealer Cult player could ever want. So list building, I felt like my list was very tooled out. Layout 1, which we'll pull up here, so you guys can kind of follow along with us as we talk about the things that we learned, and hopefully you learn something as well.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I feel like I'm going to knock out one of the easiest and simplest mistakes I should have remembered and I should not have messed up. I totally spaced that Phil had gargoyles in his list. He just had them chilling, waiting in deep strike, ready to go. And he had top of turn one. He moved out. He got a little bit of board pressure going, ready to strike from some of those great staging areas that layout one has. A lot of you have seen it. If you haven't, go watch it. It's great. But I just went out. I advanced onto my natural objective, but I didn't get quite far enough out there. And so Phil was able to just drop in some gargoyles for an easy denial and, just shoot and scoot enough bodies on there to auto-see me, and just lost some primary super easy for no reason, just none at all. Yeah. And then the other one is in the same turn. Phil brought in just wasn't rapid, was it? It was no, because I rapided. You just set up your next set of Raveners behind little 2-inch ruin down at the bottom of the screen.
Pure strains.
Or pure strains. Yes.
Yep.
His pure strain Gene Stealers. They were just set up completely hidden behind there. And I went, okay, well, there's that. And then there was just a lictor, I believe, or was it the Death Leaper? It was the
Death Leaper.
That was just chilling on the objective. And that was all you had on the point or near it. And so I went, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to rapid ingress my ponies. And my tank was set up about 12 inches away from the Gene Stealers or the Pure Strains that he brought in. And instead of deciding to be behind my Dorn with most of them, I decided to put a row in front because I had the room, which put me 9 inches away. There was no reason to risk it. They moved 12 inches. The plan was I can just now freely with my horses run up, shoot into those Pure Strains, and charge whatever is left, and fall back onto the point and deny his 1 OC Death Leaper. Would have been simple, would have been great, but Phil saw it, and Phil decided to not only roll 1, but 2 charges because he failed the first one, and he did get enough. You rolled an 11, I believe it was, so you went and just killed my horses and tagged my tank, and that really just put me on the back foot for the rest of the game. Trying to claw back on primary and out of being basically jailed right there. Did take me a while to establish any pressure into his natural. But yeah, those were really the only two mistakes I felt like I made in that game. But it was enough to really put me on the back foot. And having bottom of turn, I did what any sensible person should do. I just sacked my first two secondaries. Said we don't need those. We need challenger cards. We're just going to take four of them throughout the game. And so that's what we did. And as you can tell, Phil just really, really loved that game plan. Um, and we're going to keep telling you how much we hate them. Don't not use them because they're busted. But yeah, that was pretty much our game one. So that was kind of how the beginning of the game went. What did you take away from that game, Phil? From your side?
Yeah, so let's talk about the things that were in my control and things that weren't in my control. So Lane hinted at it. He had a turn where he pulled a challenger card where it allowed him to move through walls. So he had a tank here. It was one of the Lehman Russ Punishers, right?
Exterminator, yeah.
Exterminator. So he had an Exterminator here, and I had my Death Leaper Lone Op Stealth. 4-up invol. It's on my home objective. I'm thinking to myself, super, super safe. He doesn't even have the movement to get within range of it, to get within 12. But he pulls a challenger card that allows him to move through walls, which gave him pretty much a straight shot instead of having to pay for pivot or do anything like that to get within 12 of the Death Leaper, to kill it, to get assassinate on the turn that he pulled it. So, I could say that was within my control, but I had him as far back as possible. That is not a predictable thing that we personally should be planning for. I need to be on that objective. It's a great place for the Death Leaper to go. Super, super pleased with that overall. It was just unfortunate that he got the right challenger card to get the right secondary to kill my Death Leaper, which, is unfortunate. I went first, as Lane was saying, so my goal was to get a points advantage. The problem was, because of the secondaries Lane was drawing, and because I was able to get a points advantage, it did cause some challenger cards. So Lane got 4 challenger cards for 4 rounds. 3 of them resulting in straight up points to get 9, and then the other one giving him assassinate for a 5. So technically getting 14 points off challenger cards that he wouldn't normally have gotten. You kind of have to take those on the chin, right? We have to find ways to score points in lieu of that, not counting on the fact that our opponent won't be able to score those things or do those things. So I felt like I did a good job of denying primaries as the game went on. With my recursion and stuff like that, I was pretty pleased with it. Because anytime I poke out, right, I'm not going to be able to kill the things I need to kill as efficient as Lane is because he is running 3 Dorns. I just have to competently trade and win the points battle. And I did up to that point, but unfortunately at the end of the game, Lane was able to get a few key secondaries and score with bottom of turn to swing things around. And I wasn't able to get rid of enough assets early enough that he was down to nothing, because at that point I pretty much need to wipe him off the board to prevent him from scoring anything in that bottom of 5 scoring. So he was able to climb all the way back and pull it to a draw. So round 1, as much as I tried, Lane and I drew 76-76.
Yes, we did. And I will say I could have risked it for the Death Leaper, but with the stealth, I'd rather chose to give the +1 to hit to my tank and move through the wall. It was because it was farther back, but yeah, just a small point. But I could have tried.
Sure.
It just wouldn't have been as likely. But yes, it was still 100%. I could not have done it without the challenger card as likely. It would have been a risk, and then I would have probably just forgone the 5 points, thrown away an exterminator, and so I just decided to take the safe bet and get the 5 by going through the wall. That was my U, is the wall that I had to go through. But yeah, it was a very scrappy game. Not making some mistakes, especially into GSE. Losing my fewer trading pieces that I have is brutal. Guard has quite a few trading pieces, but literally all of GSC is a trading piece because it just comes back. So, that was basically the game, and I just needed to be able to keep him away from me and keep him from tagging me up longer than I was able to. And yeah, I think I had 1 Dorn left at the end of the game, and that is very rare in my games. So yeah, but it was a hell of a game. And we started off undefeated, despite pairing into each other. So we can't complain about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super, super close game. Even, gotta thank whole James Workshop for the challenger cards coming in clutch even after my blunders. Got a tie, they aren't broken. Not at all. Just kidding. Please get rid of them. Please. I messed up. I should have lost that game, but this is the meta we're in.
Absolutely, but you have to plan for that as a player, right? On both sides,
Yeah.
you got to be able to one punish your opponent if they make mistakes, but on the flip side, you have to know the things that you need to do to ensure you can maintain your lead. And it gets harder and harder if those things are less and less predictable. But it's a part of the game we play currently, so you better get used to it. Well, Lane, you and I, we moved on, but we were still right next to each other
Yep.
at the round two. Is there anything you thought about going into that round in terms of lessons learned or things like that that you were like set in terms of not making the same mistake twice?
Going into that game, I wanted to just be very, very conscious of what I did with my trash and making sure just positionally, like I can't afford to make more positioning mistakes like that. And I felt like the rest of the day I really played well in those regards and didn't really throw anything away, which I didn't need to. And for the weekend, actually, I felt pretty good about that and corrected those mistakes I made. I will say for our games too, we both played into Crusher Nids. I
Yep.
saw that I was going into Triple Norn. It was a very, very bug heavy list. So basically, my thought process was just I have to try to just take up the board, get in the way. I had a great game into Nicole. I think it was her first GT, she said. And I just was able to keep putting things in the way while I let my Dorns do the work and bring down the bugs as the turns went on and just kind of grounded down. Um, as far as I felt like I didn't make a ton of mistakes, just positionally, I was able to just keep a melee heavy army in front of me, and that's guards bread and butter. So, what about you? How was your round two?
Good. It was into Clayton. He was a great opponent. Really enjoyed playing into him. He was also playing Crusher Nids. He didn't have three Norns. He only had two Norns or one Norn, two Norns. He had two Norns. They're a problem for GSC. My anti-vehicle is not good into them. Those acolytes bounce because they're strength five, so I'm winning you on sixes. And even if with all my rerolls to wound, I do not do well. So the game plan was pretty straightforward. I need to just throw bodies at you and out OC Norns who have 15 OC or 17 OC on the objective. To just be like, I got to kill you. I got to dump everything into you. I got to put mining lasers into you, and I just got to make sure you die. My rock grinders were charging, doing tank shocks. I didn't even care about the feel no pain against mortals. I was just like, I'm going to throw bodies until you're dead or I'm dead. And thankfully, it ended with a Gene Circle win. They rejected the Star Gods and said, nope, we're not ready to go yet. We're still going to hang around this planet for a little bit longer. But it is just on this layout, right? It's incredibly tough to deal with because the Norns can sit right here, and it can get from the back objective, like hiding right there, and it can get all the way out there and touch that turn one. Pretty much no risk. Which is quite frustrating because it's like I want to be able to kill things. So those fire lanes that we talked about when we talked about layout one that are super important, right? This lane here to get onto this objective and staging my ridge runners back here is exactly what I did, and that's what made it effective because I was able to punish these angles. With Crusher Nids, there is a temptation for a lot of people to be very aggressive with them and push them out and just be like, hey, can you kill whatever 9 big bugs? I would recommend against that. And Clayton and I talked about it after. You don't want to expose too much too early. Even though they're big, incredibly tough bugs, I strongly would advise against it. It's still about waves. It's still about what you put out there first and what stage is out there first, because even though your Norns are incredibly tough, they can still die into certain matchups. And I am still kind of lethal, especially with the mining lasers and the trucks. And even though my little Gribblies, they wound on sixes, I have lethal hits, and I'm going to give them full rerolls to wound, and I'm just going to try to make you take saves because you will fail them eventually, which is the thought process of Gene Circle. You will fail them eventually. So overall, it was a great game. This layout is really interesting, but I thought I followed the game plan pretty effectively.
Yeah, it was on Hammer and Anvil. We should point that out. So they were the natural quote unquote objectives get moved to the 2-inch ruins that are on the edges of the board, and then your home is basically right there in the center on those L's. Yep.
Yeah, so it's
So
right here, and right here.
it was
That's what,
It was a very exposed game. That was a tough one to play against guard with bugs. I will say it was really hard for Nicole to really step onto anything without just being seen, and that was one of the nice things we talked about. Kind of went through some maybe list building for in the future. You got to have a little bit more trash in those bugs lists, especially for a layout like this. You have to make me come out to shoot something else. But just having the Norns out in the open, I was able to get some Dorn on Norn action, and her saves were not helping her. The 4-ups were not with her in that game, so it was a little unfortunate on how fast the first couple died. But it was still a really fun game. Yeah. What about your round 3, Phil?
well,
What happened there?
apparently the Nids were out in force and they were not happy that the Gene Stealer cult was still not respecting the hive mind and still not turning into biomass, because I faced another Nids player, Ian, with his invasion fleet Nids. So a lot more bodies. It had Hormagaunts out the wazoo. It still had a lot of shooting. It had the Biovore on the home field, but this Nids scores a lot better than the others because it's just body upon body upon body, and it's the one army that probably has as many trading pieces as I do. Um, so it is a little unique. It's a little bit more difficult, and it definitely takes a better understanding, which Ian definitely had, and he pushed my Gene Stealer cult to the limit of the amount of trades I can actually make over a game. Yeah, so the main thing that happened on this that was impactful is uh, Ian put out a few extra home runs. He put 2 full squads here on the center objective. One to do an action and 2 to try to hold it, because it was terraform. So he came out there, terraformed it, did the action on the objective. He terraformed his natural, and he was able to just push and push, and he even got onto my objective and terraformed it as well on turn 1. So he was able to push all of those things, and get a terraform action on all 3 of those, which made it very, very difficult because you have to work and push them off all those things, and if you're doing that, you're not doing actions. So overall, I thought about it a lot. I was like, man, I have to be super conservative. But the thing that helped me most often was the Lictor and the Death Leaper, because into those Hormagaunts, they are pretty good. And I probably could have been a little more aggressive with them with their lone op and stealth. But Hormagaunts have a lot of attacks. And I didn't want to have them die too quickly to all that AP -1 damage, one that would really put me on my back foot. So Ian did a great job of pressuring. I just think he put out one too many units at the beginning of the game that meant he couldn't trade later on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, once again, GSC just wasn't ready to join the hive mind. Not in total. So a good brawl there. For my third round, I had the pleasure of playing yet another person we rode up with. I got to play Ryan and his new Space Wolves, and check those out. He was playing Gladius Task Force. It was a heck of a game. I did go first on Terraform, so I was able to just go touch all the things, get it going, and it was very difficult for Ryan to really, as a fairly elite melee army, knock me off all those objectives, like you were saying, and then flip them back. And then just over the course of the game, that did really rack up. He had a couple of really unfortunate, like failed 4-inch charges and other things that just added up and made it really hard to claw back. But it was still Space Wolf slap. He still was able to chew through a lot of my stuff with what got there. And yeah, the Bulgrin ate them just fine. The Assault Terminators are a pain to deal with. That 4 wounds and a 2-up, 4-up is no joke. Pretty dang good. But yeah, was lucky to go first on that one. I felt like it really let me just put the pressure on, and then just keep it rolling, and then focus more on the trade game instead of the action economy. And that's where Terraform can just get so brutal. Going second with an elite army is a tough spot to be.
Yeah, it's actually one of the few missions. So for those out there, Lane said 2 things I want to harp on for you that are watching for the first time, or maybe are just are one of our recurring viewers, which we totally appreciate either way. But he said two things that are really important. Ryan failed a few critical charges. Understandably, that has happened to us all, right? We have the stories that your friends will tell you of like, oh, remember that time I failed a 3-inch rerollable charge, like double one into double one? And it's like, yeah, every time it hurts. Those are the negative things that we think about. And they stand out in our mind because they are so negative. I would caution you as a player to not dwell on those things, right? There are some variables, like sometimes the dice don't go our way, and it happens. It happened to me at this tournament multiple times where it's just like the odds said I should not have rolled that, but I did. And that's okay, right? We have to have contingency upon contingency. And as long as we did all those things and we feel like we played a good game, I'm not a huge fan of blaming dice. It is not how I feel like I get better as a player. It is understandable to get frustrated about, but I wouldn't live on it. But Terraform, and let's just move on from that. Like Terraform is one of the few missions where going first with a mobile army is huge. It's absolutely huge. Yeah. Because the Terraform action now does not complete at the end of your opponent's turn. It completes at the end of your turn, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like you can go out, like my GSC, if I go first on Terraform, I will go out, touch all 3 objectives. I will terraform all 3 objectives. I will complete all of those terraforms, and there is not a chance that you will knock me off all 3 of those and then also be able to re-terraform those things. So I will be getting the points for those, and then now it's just a trading game, which is what Gene Steeler Cult love to do. Are there any other missions that stand out for you where like going first is actually beneficial?
Oh, man. I think Terraform is just by far the one. I'm trying to think like supply drop where they disappear.
Yep.
It gives you the chance to potentially take some more space, but even then it's so close. Bottom of turn still just like you can't stop them really as long as they're playing conservative from scoring bottom of turn, the 16 points or whatever it is for holding the center. So that is very, very difficult. So even then, like that little advantage you get from going first does not overshadow the bottom. I think Terraform is probably just the best to go first in.
Yeah. So if you see that in your tournament packet and you're getting prepared to go, you need to have a plan one way or another. Is if you go first in Terraform, and Colin talked about this, Cody talked about this, Lane and I have spoken to it, you need to have a plan. So if you're looking at the player packet and you see Terraform, how do you get on the most amount of objectives turn 1 to terraform all of those things without advancing, anything like that, right? Like just how do we get onto them naturally? Or if we go second, how do I either deny my opponent by using infiltrate or using scout or being able to have multiple units out there that can go out there and kill the unit that's on the objective and then also terraform it early on in the game to prevent our opponent from getting that advantage? Or do we just say, hey, we're going to willingly let them do that, and going second, I'm relying on challenger cards and bottom of 5 scoring to try to claw that back. But if you don't have a plan in place, especially into a mission like Terraform, it's going to bite you in the butt.
Yeah, and I will say another point too. Terraform is one of the only missions where you are looking at starting on an objective with infiltrating units if they can be safe from shooting and maybe some melee. Because if you have OC5 on there, their ability to, flip it with just OC1 or even an equivalent OC5 unit, they can't do it now, right? So that's one less action you have to spend to stop them, or they might not even take that space. It's just one less thing you have to deal with. It's not going to be every game. There's going to be games where that is still just throwing it away and giving them overwhelming force, right? But in some matchups, that is something to think about. You could just start on one of those objectives if it is safe enough for you to do, and it will prevent maybe one of their own infiltrating or scouting units that doesn't have a ton of OC from getting an early terraform that you're going to have to remove later.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, Lane. Absolutely. Okay, that was the end of day 1. You and I were both 2-0-1, thrown off the bracket completely because we both got a tie, and we both knew who we were playing the following day because this tournament did pairings pretty much right after round 3 ended, so we knew who we were going into. Lane, who'd you have round 4?
Oh, wouldn't you know it? Just yet another person we drove up with. I got to play into Colin and his Knights going into round 4. So yeah, so 3 of my 4 rounds.
Yeah,
into the truck. Yeah, it's great.
Also,
yeah, it was
to say Colin, the number 9 player in the world, a very good 40K player, and one of the favorites to win the tournament altogether. with his Chaos Knights.
Yeah, he was playing Infernal Lance. It
Yep.
has some sauce. It's very similar to Guard. I really like it. If I was a Chaos Knights player, I would really at least consider playing it. The additional movement you can get out of it, lethal or sustained for maybe a couple mortal wounds, maybe. It's got a lot of viability. A 6-up feel no pain as well as an option. It's just got a lot of flexibility, and the extra 3-inch movement it helps a lot. We were playing, on layout 8 all of day 2, and it was tipping point for the 4th round, and then hammer nail for 5th, and then it went back to tipping point. But the big thing I took away from this, we were talking about kind of the lines he could draw if he were to just start with, we'll say he's on the red side, I'm on the green. If he just started a big knight aggressively right next to his home, he could give it +3 to move and tag the U that stands right over my natural. He could do that. And so I went, okay, I need to deploy very, very safely, because if he gets top of turn, I don't want to just get shot by, I can't have him putting double battle cannon with ignore cover. Like, that could seriously, impact how well my Dorns last in this game. If you get one to half health super early, he could potentially even kill it with some decent rolling. But it was just not a risk I really wanted to take, and so I deployed super safely, knowing that could go there. He had enough drops that I couldn't really work around that with all of my own drops. So I just decided I'm gonna be very conservative with all of my pieces, And then I got about halfway through, and I went, okay, I have my ratlings. They're probably going to start behind that wall, and I don't want them to get tagged. That was where I realized I should put them against that wall, because if they are against that wall, that knight can no longer tag into that terrain piece because he would be within an inch of me on his movement phase. And then I can deploy as aggressively I want on that half of my deployment zone. And that would have changed very much for how much space I could threaten with my own tanks, instead of having to give so much early, just because I was not willing to risk losing my exterminator even in this matchup super early before it gets to activate is a big loss for me. And so I really should have, thinking about it reflectively, I was like, okay, next time I play into a similar matchup, I am just going to put ratlings against the wall, because sure, he can charge tank shock, he can put a carnivore into him, it doesn't matter. But now I am not deploying timid, and I can go take up that space with my Dorns, have the threat ranges, and if I get to go first, now my ratlings are still there. They shoot, scoot, and go move block that entire side, which is what they ended up doing turn 2 or bottom of turn 1 anyway. We just went out there and took some space, and I had top of turn. That is just what they did to start the game, and just went to move block him. They obviously got Shrek'd because T2 against anything he has is not going to hold up. I think they took an entire despoiler to the face just for the memes, for the lulz. But that was my real big takeaway from that game. It came down to, he just kind of ended up doing what knights do. It's a stat check. He shoved into the middle, and I tried to bring stuff down as quick as I could. Just wasn't quite enough. Having knights, he was very good about always trying to have a big knight on the middle objective to burn it and shoot. Since they are Titanic characters, they can do both an action and shoot. So that forced me to have to focus on the bigs and bring them down, instead of trying to really bring down all his smaller knights. Is actually the more convenient thing to do in that matchup. He forced me to deal with the bigs because I can't afford to let him get a scorch there and then also do whatever he wants the rest of the game, because I just didn't have the resources to really deny his natural. Yeah, that was my round 4 though. Tough game, heck of a game. Ended up, I want to say, 79-89 in his favor. A heck of a game, super fun, and yeah, felt like I learned a lot into my first game against new knights. So it was a good one. How was your round 4?
Yeah, I played into a local GT winner up in Montana, Corey. He was a great opponent, and he's running Death Guard, Virulent Victorium, something I am very familiar with, and I think allowed me to play the game in the way I needed to, because it's an incredibly tough matchup. But the one thing that Gene Stealer Cult has an advantage of into that matchup is I have more trading pieces than Death Guard does. And as someone who plays Death Guard often, is, I would say, one of their main weaknesses, right? When they lose their Poxwalkers and they lose their Chaos Spawn, and now they have to start putting out Plague Marines or Death Shroud Terminators or drones to be those trade pieces, it gets very difficult very fast. So I was very comfortable playing into the matchup. The other thing that scared me quite a lot is -1 damage, because that means like my big brick of Raveners kind of just bounce. Even though they have so many attacks and they'll have sustained and I'll make them hit on twos, they'll just bounce, which is really, really tough to deal with. So I knew I had to screen. I knew I had to push the Death Shroud out. I knew I couldn't let them get too far. And if they did, like I was going to be in a tough spot. Overall, I would say Corey made like only a handful of mistakes. One of the biggest ones was he brought out his Demon Prince and he was running Mortarion. He had a Demon Prince, he had his little Death Shroud Terminators, and then he had big old Mortarion sitting right there behind this awesome staging piece. Like it is insane how well some armies can take advantage of it. So what ended up happening is there are lanes here to shoot into those Death Shroud Terminators. And you betcha I was going to try to take advantage of those lanes. But I kind of trapped Corey where I pushed up with a Lictor to get within 6 inches of the Death Shroud Terminators and the Demon Prince to get my +1 to hit for all the mining lasers that were going to shoot into there. Well, he pulled those Death Shroud Terminators because he didn't want them to get shot away from the Demon Prince, and it made the Demon Prince not lone op. So I was able to unload into the Demon Prince that turn, and this was turn 2. So I was able to unload into the Demon Prince and charge him with a Rock Grinder that, even though like there isn't a lot of space here with a 12-inch move, he could get all the way up here, do all the shots, charge it, tank shock it. I just needed it to die because I didn't want them to have access to more CP. It was going to be one of those games where I needed to bleed as many resources from the Death Guard player as possible. So that allowed me to put a lot of pressure on, and it forced Corey to make some suboptimal choices because that Demon Prince, from experience, is so critical to the game plan. And from then on, it's just a trading game, right? Getting on objectives. This was Scorched Earth. I was able to deep strike all the way behind him and get towards the Tallyman and a Foul Blight Spawn that was hanging out on his home. So I was able to kill both of those, denying more CP and also burning his home, which he wasn't able to do in return. And that was all because I was going first. And I have to do those things to get a points advantage. Otherwise, I'm just chasing the game, and you can't chase the game when you're going first.
Yeah, totally fair. I think that's it for round 4, unless you had any other thoughts.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, on into round 5. You got done playing one Death Guard player. I got to play another. We went into Hammer and Anvil. Purge the Foe was round 5. I got to play Gage. He was a super cool guy from Powell, and he was running Virulent Victorum, so the -1 to damage strat, innate sticky, pretty good. He had Morty as well. He did have one unit of Death Shrouds with the Lord of Contagion. That just slaps. It's still very, very good. And then he had a unit of 20 Poxwalkers with Typhus and a Land Raider with a unit of Plague Marines in it. And that was kind of his list. He did not have any heavy bloat launchers or bloat drones, just a mower and a flamer. I think the big thing for that game, even though I was guard, I just was able on layout 8. The points at which I can stage from to just go move block are absolutely ridiculous. And just to pick the fights at my pleasure, having an additional 3 inches of movement. And then the shooting lanes are just very, very weird. There was not really a lot of great places for him to hide. He also had a Plague Burst Crawler. Between the Land Raider, the Plague Burst Crawler, and the Rhino, and then all of his other stuff, there just wasn't a lot of aggressive staging points that he could be at that I couldn't just shoot him turn 1. And so it took him a little bit longer than he would have liked to really get a lot of threat range and progress into the board. And with guard, I just was able to somewhat jail him, and it became very difficult. He eventually ended up, rapid ingressing with Morty. He, as people like to do apparently against me, he made some 9-inch charges just out of deep strike, like Phil did 3 times, I think, in our game. But yeah, Gage dropped in some Death Shrouds, charged Adorn, absolutely cleaned its clock like it was nothing. It is impressive what they do with lethal sustained and lance.
Yep.
Wild. They're not too cheap at all. But that was I was able to kind of just keep him from being able to touch my resources as quickly as he kind of needed to, and my tanks were able to just keep cranking out damage. I was able to kind of dictate where the fights happened, and I was able to make it always a trade down for the most part. It was a pretty difficult game. But yeah, there was a couple turns I think turn 3 and turn 4. I didn't kill it a single unit though. Dub, how did your round 4 go, Phil?
Yes.
5 games.
Round five, yep. So my round five went into another Denver local. I can confidently say that I've never played Adam before. His name Adam Tricola. He is a fantastic player. He got top 16 at LVO this most recent year. He goes 5-1, 6-0 quite regularly, and he is definitely a Space Marine specialist. I don't think I've ever seen him run anything but Space Marines, but he's very good with them. And he was running New Blood Angels. New Blood Angels are scary. You know why they're scary? Because they move super fast. If you're running the optimal list, you're running 3 packs of 5-man JPI at a minimum. You're running Sangard, you're running Dante, you're running a Chaplain, you're doing all those things, and they trade so incredibly well. The problem is they're still Space Marine bodies. So they're only toughness 4, which means my strength 5 mining weapons love going into them, especially with +1 to wound against infantry. Like it's so very good. At flat damage 3, it means it picks up a Sangard each activation or each failed save, which is really nice. I made a few mistakes, and Adam made a few mistakes in that game that really punished him. One of which was on turn 1. I was able to heroic with the Lictor that was behind this objective into my pure strains that were out here. And Vanguard vets unfortunately had to base close enough where the Lictor could heroic, and it ended up denying area deny because the Lictor lived. Vanguard vets aren't necessarily the most optimal unit going into Lictors because the Lictor has fights first and they're only 1 damage. You are toughness 6. So right off the bat, he was on the back foot, and it was Purge, and I was going second. So Purge is one of my the missions that I planned for the most. All these guys can tell you, Lane, Matt, John Kilcommons, the last time I lost to Matt and John at a tournament, it was the Purge into both of their Tau. Because Gene Stealer Cult, what I was running at the time, we don't do Purge well, right? Like I just died everything, and I really struggle in that matchup. I did have the benefit of going second, and I don't think I win it going first because my opponent knows the information. He knows how many units he needs to kill. I had that information, and I was either able to get more. So there's 1 or 2 turns where turn 1 he didn't kill anything turn 1, and I was able to kill something. So I got to purge the foe kill, and he didn't. And then there was a couple turns where I got kill more, which should not be happening. But because I went second, it allowed me to control the tempo of that game, which was huge, absolutely huge. It ended up finishing 91-92. So it was a 1-point difference. We both broke 90. It was an absolutely insane game that came down to some huge scoring later in the game and some pretty incredible play from Adam. I can't wait to play him again because he already said it. He can't wait to run it again because I know he learned a lot from that game. And Gene Stealer Call are definitely a unique army. And for those out there that are learning armies for the first time, you may never play against Final Day, and you may come across me or some of the other lunatics that are playing it. And that might be your first time going into it. But the words of Cody Giroux should ring in your head. Even though you don't know all about what that army does, you know what your army does. And that's what you should fall back on always, because there's so many things that you need to be asking and you need to know. But at the end of the day, you know what your army does and what you need to do to score. And that's what you need to fall back on, because you may never play Final Day ever until you run into me. And then I teach you what gargoyles do and raveners do and mining lasers hitting on 2s do. It's all good. It's just not everyone runs it.
Yeah, just one more Denver player to play on on the trip to the top. Was a close one. Purge definitely one of the hardest, for sure. Not a big fan of it myself as a guard player. You just definitely have to play a lot different than almost any other mission, because losing pieces really sucks. It makes trying to play the effective trade game a lot harder, especially when my goal is to just jail you with trash. I
Yep.
just lose all my trash, and you score a free 4 points because I have to kill more than you did, and it's hard.
Very
Yeah.
difficult.
So going into the final round, at this point, I've accrued one loss. You are still technically undefeated. Who? Well, we'll save yours for last. Let's do
Okay.
yours last. Yours a little more exciting. I got to play World Eaters, a faction that I have gotten a lot of reps into thanks to Ryan, and it is just another melee army that guard and 12 Bulgrin generally do not really struggle into. It is one of the more favorable matchups in my opinion for guard. Tons of damage threes, Tundra Blast. If you run Berserkers or you run 8-bound, now that there's no Feel No Pain, you just pick stuff up. I was able to screen really well for the most part. The only mistake I felt like I made in the game, he had a unit of spawn we were on tipping point like this, that went up to his natural, and they were right against the wall, and I kind of forgot they were there, and so I didn't decide to screen, and I had a Dorn sitting on the bottom or on the top, I guess, that was just kind of sitting up there. And then my Cadian command squad was really like on the back of my home objective. They weren't super far up, but he decided to go for he's going to shoot the gap. They have built-in advance and charge, and he rolled a 5 on his advance, and it meant he just needed a 5 on the charge, and so he's like, well, screw it, I'm going to go for it. And he went past that and went to charge my command squad. I overwatched it, didn't do a thing, did not get like hardly any sixes. I got a couple, he feel no pain, everything. And so he just charged directly into my command squad. And then he was like, well, I am going to be able to just kill this and then pile into your Dorn. So I had a unit of just normal Cadians that were standing kind of behind the double 2-inch ruin that I heroicked with them to make sure he could not, in fact, tag my Dorn, which allowed me to then push up. And he had 3 Forge Fiends. He had 2 that were kind of out. One was sitting on kind of his middle objective that was able to kind of shoot me off the middle. And then another one kind of just pushed up. And because the Dorn wasn't tagged, I was able to push up far enough to get a line of sight kind of all the way across that gap towards his home objective, to where there was a Forge Fiend there. And I was able to just pick up 2 Forge Fiends. And that took away pretty much all of his shooting power. He did have one more Forge Fiend that was sitting all the way behind his home. But that made it really just almost a purely shooting versus melee matchup. And when I can get that against World Eaters, generally, as long as I can keep my screens going out in front of you, it just makes it, you have to hit my wall and you're trading down super hard, and then you just get shot. And that's basically how the game went. I was able to just kind of snowball that one, even despite that. I got top of turn, so I just had already advanced all of my screening units into safe spaces. That the extra 3 would have been nice, but not necessary for me to just keep a steady flow of bodies just in his way. And then, yeah, the game just got to play out from there. Phil, though, got to play in the championship game, and he went into our boy Brett Perkins, yet another Denver player. And how did that game go, Phil?
Well, okay. So Brett and I have played against each other often. We play practice games against each other. We run reps against each other. So I am very familiar with Brett's list. If you aren't familiar with Brett's list, I strongly recommend you get on BCP. Look for this GT. I'll post the link for this in the YouTube description, so you can take a look at Brett's list, because it's very interesting, and it's a little different than what you normally see from Shadow Legion in one specific area. So he has Be'lakor, he has a Bloodthirster, he has all the bells and whistles of Pinks and Beasts of Nurgle and Fleshhounds, but he's got a big unit of Crushers, 6-banner Crushers, with a character attached, and he has Fade to Darkness attached to that unit, and his Bloodthirster has Scout. So his Bloodthirster with a 9-inch Scout, Advance and Charge, has Fly, all this stuff, a very, very scary unit. And the Crushers are an incredible unit that have 2 innate things that I'm very aware of as someone who's played into Brett often, that they have the capability to do. They have Mortals on the charge, and they'll do D3 apiece on a 4-up for every model in the unit. So they'll go into something, they'll do a bunch of Mortals, and then he will pile in to something else. If he's killed the target that he needs to kill with the mortals, he'll pile into something else, fight that unit, kill it, and then go back into strat reserves. Does that sound annoying? Good, because it is. It is a problem that takes a unique solution to solve. We rolled off, and Brett got going second. So going second on linchpin is a real pain. It's very difficult for just in general playing into a very good player. You have to find ways to take advantage, or hope that your opponent makes a mistake or something like that. And Brett is a very good player, and it's hard to take advantage of mistakes when a good player doesn't make many. He also has 18-inch loan op, so off Be'lakor, so he kind of chains everything out, right? Like if Be'lakor is here, he's got flesh hounds with one of them being within 6. He got his pinks, and they're all chained out so they can touch this objective, but also have 18-inch loan op. Bloodthirster, he's sitting right here, kind of in the open, kind of exposed, but he's within 6 of Be'lakor, so he's loan op. So all of these things are incredibly difficult for all of my guns because I really want to get them engaged. But if I get close, and I won't be able to kill the thing I need to kill because he's got 18-inch loan op. The crushers would come in, they would pick up whatever they need to pick up because I am not tough. Like he might just kill rock grinders with the mortals alone. My goal was to put a single unit out in front of the crushers every time where I know they would come down. That way, the single unit of crushers, if they went into my little 5-mans, they kill them with mortals, and then there's nothing else for them to pile into, so they have to stay there. And then I kill them, and then they die. The problem was, every single time I went to go do that, I had to put another unit out to go do another action or to control something, because I had a secondary that was driving me to do so, and I couldn't give up those points. So as the game went on, it became more and more obvious that I was like keeping the game even, but I can't keep the game even in that matchup because if I do, at the bottom of 5, he will just score more than me. So you have to take risks. I took one where I dropped in my Raveners. They dropped in Rapid Ingress right here, and I pushed on Brett's Natural. I was able to kill the pinks down to a single one, but I wasn't able to wipe the unit. And I killed the Beast of Nurgle that was on that objective. But I was able to flip the objective, thankfully. But Brett was able to get a gap because I had Pure Strains here, trying to screen out the next wave of Crushers. And then I had a unit of 5-man Flamer Acolytes right here. But he was able to find a gap pretty much right here with the first unit of Crushers outside of dying. And with an advance in charge, he could get all the way onto my home, or onto my natural, allowing him to kill the 10-man of Mining Weapon Acolytes and the Death Leaper, and then disappear again. Which was just... That was a tough one. That was really tough. Because it meant that, that was the game at that point. And it was just one of those things that I tried. Spacing wise, I left a gap there, and that was a mistake on my behalf, where I left enough space for a Crusher to get there and chain out. So then with an advance in charge, he was able to get onto my natural. And every time I didn't sacrifice the secondaries, I put out units that he was then able to, mortal one and then pile into the other, because I was trying to keep the score as close as possible as I was going first, and I needed to put units out there to actually score those secondaries. If I didn't do that, then I would fall behind on secondaries, and then I would also fall behind on everything else, which was going to be tough. Looking back at that matchup, there's a few positioning things I would have done differently, specifically not allowing those Crushers in, and also there was a world where I just send the Raveners maybe turn 2, and just like, hey, I'm just going to cause an issue. I'm going to shoot him up there. I have to disrupt the game plan somehow, because him just sitting there and letting the game progress and me hoping that I could find somewhere where he makes a mistake with the Crushers did not work.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that is one of the harder matchups. It wasn't Purge even, but just on the matchup level, your army does not have a ton of super tough units, and it's so hard to maintain that spacing where those Crushers don't pick up 2 things a turn. It is so hard to avoid those situations, even with your recursion. Brett's demons play very well into an army like that.
Yeah, so that was my final. It finished 69-79 into Brett's favor. I couldn't, having a chance to win a tournament with Gene Stealer Cult final day, it felt good because it was something that, talking to Colin and you and a bunch of other guys in the community, I constantly get asked, Phil, do you think you can win a GT with final day? Do you really think that's the case? And I will continue to confidently say yes. I think it's a well-tooled out unit for the meta. It's good to deal with Death Guard. It's good to deal with Chaos Knights. It's good to deal with Imperial Knights. It has all of the tools. It just takes an effective pilot to use properly to go in there and be effective. So I think it proved that Gene Stealer Cult is in a perfectly fine place with Final Day. You don't have to run Host of Ascension to be effective, and I think I showed that.
Yeah. I really do think Brett's Demons were probably one of the hardest matchups for you to run into at any point this weekend. So, seeing them in the finals, it was a great test, a heck of a game, couple of close things, and not going first would have been a big help. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. We ran a little bit long here. But we made a couple things. We learned from some things. Hopefully, our opponents, I felt like I was able to have a couple good conversations about maybe some list changes or just some ways to go about a couple missions that hopefully help some of the players up there as well. If you have anything that stuck out to you, be sure to drop it in the comments from this weekend if you're watching. And I think that's it. Phil, any final thoughts?
No, I think it's one of the ways that I have found to best stress test a list is to play it in a tournament. Playing 6 games in a row, you will find out very quickly where the missing elements of your list are and what works and what doesn't work. And you will find that out at a tournament. And I'm not saying that's the only place you will, but I have found that to be incredibly effective. So if you are thinking of taking the dive to play in your first tournament, I strongly recommend go do it. But there's some things you need to be prepared for when going to play in a tournament. 1, playing on a clock. So just be comfortable with it. It's not a tool to be used against you. It's just to make sure that you and I have equal amount of time to play the game. I'm running Gene Stealer Cult. I'm going to use a lot of time, and I want to make sure you have the same amount of time I do when we're playing the game. Secondly, just make sure when you're going to a tournament, you understand the baseline of your rules. Cody said it, Colin said it, Lane and I have talked about it multiple times. You just need to be familiar with your list. And be comfortable with what your list does, and be confident about that going into it. You don't need to look at the meta. You don't need to look at what everyone else is running. Just focus on what you do. And if you're confident, you know the baseline of all of your rules, you will have a blast at the tournament, because I can say when we went up to Billings, they had a huge convention that was going on at the same time. There was a beer tent right next to us, so we could go out there, get beers, bring them back to the table, have a great time, play against great opponents, and I couldn't ask for a better weekend, and it was definitely worth the drive up.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to heading back up for another one, whether it's later this year or next summer. We will be going to more Montana events for sure. But in the meantime, do not forget that victory isn't given, it's forged, and it's forged right here on Mastercrafted. We will see you all next time.